30 years of lore. Ian's always reading.
Hiya, back again for book club. As I said in the last video, we caught up with Dan Abnett recently to chat about his Bequin trilogy, or at least the 2 books so far. And in order to do that, we read up on both Pariah and Penitent. Now, while I've read all the intervening novels, Mira jumped straight to Pariah from Xenos. But Penitent is a direct sequel to Pariah, so it should be less confusing. Let's get into it. Oh yeah, again, spoilers. This contains spoilers. Hi, Mira. Yeah, we're back again. And this time we're going to do Penitent, which you read actually, both of us read immediately after Pariah because we realised Dan was coming to talk to us and we better know them.
Yeah, we basically chain smoked those 2 books, didn't we?
Yeah.
Bang, bang.
Binge drunk them.
Very, very good. So, I mean, just to warn you, I have so many more questions. So many.
It's all right. Well, maybe we should do the questions first. And to be honest, it makes sense to have more questions on this because when we had that interview with Dan, one of the things I asked was, this is the only book in all of these seasons that I feel actively makes reference to other 40k novels in entirely different series. I asked, that's an interesting decision to make now. What's the point in a 10-book arc where you go, okay, I'm going to assume not only have people read this 10-book arc, they've also read the other novels from this publisher. And yeah, Dan said, it's this point.
There are so many references. I'll ask you questions about loads of them, I'm sure.
Okay, well, let's do it. Let's do questions.
In the beginning of the book, there is, something comes up about an angel who helped the Primark. She's thinking, oh, I'm remembering these tales of the person whose name we don't mention had an angel helper. Is that anything to do with any lore, or is that?
The Primark of the Blood Angels, which is what is her helper's a Blood Angel. Yeah. The Primark of the Blood Angels, Sanguinius, had angel wings.
Right.
But he wasn't a helper of Horus, who's the bad guy we don't talk about.
Who is he the helper of? Anybody?
The Emperor, he was a loyal Primarch. He served the Emperor. It's interesting because obviously it's 10,000 years of religious doctrine and you're not completely sure how much Bequin has been taught. We find out later in this that she, there's some stuff I did not expect her to know that she does know, like stuff that normal people in the world don't know that she knows. But then she's been taught as an inquisitorial agent, which would imply she knows more than the average person. But also she's been taught as a fake inquisitorial agent by a secret chaos cult. So who knows what she's been taught? Maybe, you know what? Maybe the reason she's referring to that is because she's been taught by the Cogniti.
Yes.
So they're like, yeah, the evil person we don't like had an angel helper. And you're like, what? You mean the Emperor's Primarch Sanguinius, the loyalist, was an angel? Maybe
we're like 2 minutes in and my head's exploded. Okay. Do you think, is there a reason that Eisenhorn has violet eyes?
Oh, that's a good one. I can't remember if that's a thing in the Eisenhorn trilogy.
No, I can't either. But it came up with me because I used to read Tamora Pierce, and she had a slew of books about Alana the Lioness. That was a fantasy setting, and on repeatedly mentioning that this girl had violet eyes.
There is a link in 40k. There was, depending which part of the timeline you are, a planet called Cadia. There's a place called the Eye of Terror, which is where chaos lives for all intents and purposes. It's where the warp and real space cross over. And guarding the only entrance in and out is a planet called Cadia. And the people of Cadia have violet eyes.
I knew there was something. Well,
and it goes even further back in the lore, and you find out that before Cadia was this imperial fortress world guarding it, before that, when it was just populated by weird mutant humans, they also had violet eyes. So it's something about living on Cadia that causes violet eyes. But Eisenhorn's not from Cadia. So I can't remember if that is something that happens to him. Like in the universe of 40k, there are so many different humans that you frequently get people mentioned who are like, oh yes, they've got purple hair and yellow eyes and pitch black skin. Who knows? Well,
we could be just making up a conspiracy theory here. I'm quite happy to be corrected, but I would love if there was a link from Alana the Lioness of Tamora Pierce's books to the Warhammer universe. So that's canon now.
That's definitely what it is.
There was a quote from Eisenhorn I really liked. He said right at the beginning, I make friends well enough. I just don't seem to be able to keep them. Lol. Because they die quite a lot. So I really like that. In this book, we're exploring a parallel universe. They're looking for a way to get to the dust place. And it reminded me of that movie, the really terrible one with Cara Delevingne.
Which one?
It's really horrific. It's a sci-fi movie where they're in one dimension and they have a special thing and they can reach their arm through into another dimension. Valerian,
yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah, basically I got Valerian kind of vibes because it was that whole searching for a parallel universe around the back. Okay, more questions. Grails. Can you play as them? What are they?
Continuing the theme of these videos, they're a new invention for this book.
Oh.
I mean, the idea that there are some like constructs made of humans that are kind of warpy and evil and have taken the human and made it into a thing, or the pariah and made it into a thing, that pops up all over the bloody place in 40K. But specifically the Grails, they are a new version of that.
Do you think that these creatures and things that Dan Abnett's made up will be introduced into the game?
It sort of depends which era Games Workshop's in, whether they like doing that. You tend to find sometimes that main characters from books are introduced, but it's relatively rare that something's introduced in a novel and then becomes a thing in the game. I think Heresy probably has a few more things like that. It's usually the other way around. The games designers have got an idea of where they want it to go years out. They make a model and suddenly it's in all the books. Basically, Games Workshop have made Eisenhorn, the person, as a model twice.
Okay.
And they've made Gaunt's Ghosts again twice. And then it's Gaunt and like the 4 or 5 main characters. Gaunt's Ghosts, the whole 15-book series, introduces tons of new chaos things, none of which have ever made it into the game. It's part of this idea that like the books are a way of showing you how incredibly varied this world is.
Okay, that makes sense. But there is precedent. So you never know. I'm really interested in what you just said. It depends which era of Games Workshop. And I feel like I want to ask about that, but that would probably be a whole other video, right?
Maybe. I mean, it's more that it seems like sometimes they're more up for playing into the IP than other times.
Interesting. You're going to do a video on that, Ian?
What Gaunt's Ghosts? It's only when you read it.
Okay, great.
I was thinking, what's the best Gaunt's Ghost book to start from? I was kind of thinking, there's another sort of book Dan Abnett writes, right? I mean, there's lots of sort of books Dan Abnett writes, but he's most famous for, I would say, 2 sorts of things. One is the Eisenhorn first-person detective novel that's, really well known, and the Bequin's a little bit like. But the other thing is these like big, loads of points of view novels about a thing. Gaunt's Ghost is a bit like that. It's very human, and there's like maybe 20 points of view characters existing in this one war zone. The point of view of everyone from like the Primark at the top to like 3rd Guardsman Jim, who has been called up and doesn't know why. There's books like that he does really, really well, and there's a few of them. And maybe those would be a good one to do because it's very different to the first-person narrative mystery novel. Okay,
all right. Watch this space. Is there any relevance to the infinity symbol in the Warhammer universe?
Don't think so.
They mentioned that Old Terror washes up here, and we were just talking about that, weren't we?
Yeah.
I was like, how are they finding these artifacts? So I really liked how they put that in. They were like, oh yeah, Old Terror, we seem to be some kind of powerful node. So that was quite well.
Maybe Queen Mab was originally colonized really early.
Yes.
So it has all and then not found again till really late. So it just has all this stuff.
Yeah, I like that they do have that stuff because that gives me an in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They even had what did they have? They even had a place name, not Hampstead Heath. There was a London place name, and I was like, anything to hang on to, anything for me. It helps. Is Helicon shipping a thing?
No, that's just a company.
Is Adeptus Mechanicus a thing?
Yeah.
What's Adeptus Mechanicus?
Adeptus Mechanicus, I think you know this already. I think you've seen this in other things and you've forgotten. In 40K, technology hasn't changed much in thousands of years because it's kind of regarded as a holy art. And basically there is a ally to the Imperium / faction of the Imperium called the Adeptus Mechanicus based on Mars. They're an entire society with their own religion based around tech priests. I've replaced bits of their body with machinery. They worship knowledge, and it's considered heresy to try and make new knowledge because only the Omnissiah can make new knowledge. It is questionable how much anyone knows how the technology works and how much they're just digging up relics of the past and copying them. And it's clear from when you get Mechanicus characters that they do know an awful lot, but it's this weird mix of like understanding a lot, but not understanding crucial components and things like that. Certainly your average person would not know technology nearly as well as we do. And so, yeah, the Adeptus Mechanicus are this priesthood that have a monopoly on technology.
Omnissiah, I barely knew her. Who are the Night Lords, and is there a series of books about them?
Yeah, we're going to get into... you've been reading the comments. reference?
No, that they mention it in this book. I swear, maybe it's in the catacomb section.
Oh yeah, maybe. So the Night Lords. This comes up again when the college is introduced in the book, which is one of those moments where you're like, oh shit, oh right, we need to know stuff from outside these books. Okay. The Night Lords are one of the legions that turned traitor in the Horus Heresy. They're all violent, sadistic criminals from the planet of violent, sadistic criminals.
Okay. Not a holiday destination planet.
Yeah, I know, right? So they're from planet organized crime, and they're all sadist murderers.
Lovely. More Warhammer beautiful imagery there. In the catacombs, the below bit, Beta sees some artwork with a red character against a blue sky. Is that significant?
I don't know. I don't know if that's another reference to like a famous bit of art from old Earth.
Or it could be a reference to something. It could be foreshadowing with Dan Abnett.
Yeah, who knows? It could be a clue. It could be an in-world reference to what John Blanchard looks like, but that doesn't often have any blue in it.
I'm going to say this wrongly. The heretic Amaron, a thing. It was like a poem. The 9 stuns who stood and the 9 who turned.
Oh no, I think that's made up for this.
Okay.
Yep.
Who's Malus Codicum?
I think the Malus Codicium.
What? Wait, let me ask that again. What is the Malus Codicium?
I think it's an evil book.
Okay.
Yeah, a generic evil book, I think.
There was an evil book in Eisenhorn.
Yeah, but it was called the Necrotuch.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it's similar. It's in the same library. The same Dewey Decimal System numbers. Okay. Let's talk about Prospero and the 12th Legion.
Ah, well, the 12th Legion, I didn't pick up on the amount of references to the Horus Heresy series there are in this.
Okay.
So the 12th Legion were, and again, this all comes up when the college are revealed, who last time we thought were a spooky occult ghost story. Turns out loads of Marines from different legions and chapters, including loyalist and traitor ones. That's one of the key things of it. They're like, who we don't know yet. Who are these random selection of Marines who are all buddies from different legions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you sure it's the 12th Legion in the Burning the Prospero that gets referenced, not the 15th?
Let me just double check.
15th Legion.
Yes. Oh my God. Ian, I tested you. That's a trick question. It stood on a world far away a long time ago. The city is gone and the world is dead. The planet was called Prospero. I felt cold suddenly. And then that was a traitor world of the ancient days. I said, you speak of the infamous 15th Legion.
Yes. The 15th Legion were called the Thousand Sons. They were all space wizards. They were the Space Wizard Legion of Space Wizards. They were, in a long and convoluted story, technically traitors. Questionable whether they were really traitors or how much they were really traitors. They definitely, by this point, they're really traitors.
Okay.
But they were, and they lived on a planet called Prospero, because 40K loves a Shakespeare reference.
Yes.
There's another legion that come from a planet called Caliban. That's all you need to know.
Well, that makes sense, because there's someone called Magnus or Magus with reference to that.
Yeah, so Magnus was the Primarch of the 15th Legion, and many people on the internet would say that he did nothing wrong.
Okay. I love that. So more to discover about that. An Interex Mauler weapon. Can I use that if I'm playing a tabletop?
No, because the Interex are another Horus Heresy reference, and they're all dead thousands of years before. Damn
it. I have to hope some of their armory washes up on a planet somewhere far away. Who is the missing Primarch?
There are 2 missing Primarchs. This is another massive 40K long-term bit of deliberate missing lore. There were 20 Primarchs. We know that all 20 were found. It says all 20 were found in the Great Crusade, but by the time of the Horus Heresy, there were only 18 left. 9 turned to chaos, 9 stay loyal. Basically, it's a deliberate Easter egg hunt. Loads and loads of references make reference to who these 2 Primarchs were and why they went missing well before the Horus Heresy. And generally, the whole joke is no one knows.
Okay.
Like it's a deliberate thing put there so that people can make up their own story, or people can constantly refer to it as something that happened in the midst of time. In the Horus Heresy series, anytime the Primarchs refer to their 2 missing brothers, they talk about how they all agreed never to mention it again. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Brilliant. What a get out clause. None of us will mention it ever again. I think that concludes my rapid fire questioning.
Okay, good.
Cut some sections out because we sound damn ignorant. Well, I do. So yeah.
But yeah, so there we are. So hopefully that's a bit more clarity, or at least some things you can just cross off and go, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Obscure reference to another book. Don't worry about that. I enjoyed this. I don't know if I enjoyed it more or less than Pariah, because you read them next to each other. They kind of feel like one book.
I think I enjoyed it less. because it had a little bit of like a horror element. The whole catacomb section was super dark, like, body horror, a lot of visceral, bloody moments, and just that suspension of fear and being dark for so long. Really grody crucifixion, scary bone collector men. It was just all terrifying. The other reason I didn't like it as much is there's so many people. There are so many characters. And I think I could handle an ensemble cast. I mean, sometimes I love that. My first books were The Secret Seven and The Famous Five, after all. But I think it's so many characters laid on top of so much lore. So trying to keep up with all the different people. Why is she being nice now and then being horrible to Beta? Some of these people, are they also traitors within their factions? And it all became like... they addressed that. The fact that Nail basically follows Eisenhorn when Eisenhorn's around and then switches back to Ravana when he's not. Yeah, it's like a poly relationship. It's acceptable now. I mean, it's always been acceptable, but now it's, is in the current parlance. So I enjoyed it slightly less. I think if you look at Pariah, that is such an origin story, isn't it, of the new Bequin. So in this book, we get Eisenhorn and Ravana's sort of associates are all involved a lot more. Because most of Pariah, they're hiding. Right. Or they're in disguise or they're someone else. In this, you very much see Eisenhorn and his gang, and you very much see Ravana and his gang and how they operate. Did they start to make more sense this time? They did. I found Ravana excruciatingly patriarchal. Really? Yeah, I found it very, I guess I came to this realization that Beta is stuck between these two very, very powerful, super-powered factions, two very kind of patriarchal type men. Yeah. Both trying to guide her and also, we care about you, but we need something for you. And obviously, I mean, because we read Xenos first, I'm always going to be on that side, right? Yeah, I haven't kind of made a connection with Ravana yet. But I think Ravana's a less sympathetic character. I think there's a reason Ravana's an ensemble. He starts out being much more sympathetic, and he's sort of a bit of a Professor X and a bit of a... But I think in this book, Ravana feels less reasonable. Yeah. Ravana's very much feels like the grim hand of the Imperium. Yes. Like that I can't say the word, totalitarian vibe. And, that's not an attractive, that's not on my my list of dating, please be not that I'm trying to date characters in books, but Ian, as somebody who loves Warhammer and has read all these books, when these two kind of groups showed up, were you like, how are you experiencing them together in this book? I was kind of fine with them being on the sidelines. Like, I've read all those books and I knew they were going to pop up in the book. After the first book, that at some point those two groups of people are coming. I was more like interested to see who was still around. This is set a few years after the old book, so some of those characters are main characters, like Patience or Kara or Harlon. Are all main characters in those books. There are some new people who are like I think there's like a guy with a knife and a guy who's a sniper. There's always a guy who's a sniper. They get killed all the time. What better way to show that the enemy had the drop on you all along by killing the sniper you hid in the building? Okay, yeah, I was just thinking, I bet there's a load of readers who are like, have missed those people, like old friends, so we're super stoked to see them return. There's some correction of old things here. Like, I like the little bit of humanity that Patience Kiss gets, because I'm not sure she ever gets much. Oh, yay. Well, times there are changing. She gets a friend. Yay, friends. I think when I go back and read the other books, it'll be really interesting. Yeah. Like, I'll do the jigsaw backwards, so yeah. I have a bone to pick, which... I like the whole thread into like going into the debauched Victorian underground full of artists. I'm not completely okay with the idea that all the artists are like drunken dilettantes, but it is a very Charles Dickens era Victorian thing. Are you saying this because you're in the creative industries a lot in theatre and you are... I happen to work in the theatre. I absolutely love that because, I mean, you've got to remember in those times that was kind of looked down upon a little bit of an underclass. And then there's the kind of opium stuff and you had, performers seeming very like, ooh, in this very uptight society. But I really liked that bit of revelry, like the time Crosley comes in and goes, "You having a party without me?" kind of thing. That probably not in that voice. But how dare you have a party without me? And then they're like, "No, we're in a really important, like this is a position." And then he shits his pants. Yeah. Like, for me, that's great, like light relief, especially when you've been somewhere so dark and people are being killed all over the place, and there's a house fire that destroys all your mates. So I think it's quite again with Shakespearean party of actors. That reminded me of Midsummer Night's Dream, where you have Bottom, and so I was here for them.
Maybe that's a deliberate reference, obviously, because Queen Mab is a Romeo and Juliet reference. I was going to say Midsummer Night's Dream. I mean, I'm getting confused. My Shakespeare fairies mixed up. Sure. Queen Mab's, of course, a Romeo and Juliet reference.
Oh, I thought Queen Mab was an Arthurian reference, so I'm completely at sea now.
It might have come from somewhere, but I think the most common thing you'd think of with Queen Mab is the Queen of the Fairies that Mercutio says to Romeo in Romeo and Juliet when he's trying to persuade Romeo to come to the party. Like, come and have fun with Queen Mab. In the Baz Luhrmann version, Queen Mab is like a pill they take.
Oh, wow. Can I just say one thing, Ian? I fucking love Dan Abnett. He's great. We're getting so much out of this. I mean, I never want to have that person's mind. I wouldn't want to live in Dan's head,
There is a really interesting thing in 40K. Dan Abnett's really good at it. Yeah, that's why he sort of gets the spirit of the world so well. But there is this beautiful thing that, like, it's written at a time where a lot of the people who were making it were basically art students. So a lot of the references, like things like Queen Mab being in it, or the fact that half the planets of the Horus Heresy Legion's named after Shakespeare things. There's a lot of like literary art, ancient history art references.
Oh my God.
Dotted throughout.
I would never have known that. So the people making this have this horrendous dark world, have brought in these beautiful golden threads of classical art history.
It's one of the things that I find really interesting about it, because it makes it seem so much deeper, that there's all these like threads pulled in that aren't just, I stole that idea from Batman. It's, I stole that idea from Heart of Darkness.
Can you do a video where you go through all these references?
We might, yeah, I'm really tempted. Maybe Easter time, do like Easter egg 40K videos. These are all the references.
Yay.
You just mentioned something that I wanted to bring up, which is Eisenhorn's oft-used tactic. And I think it's now the third time in the books that Eisenhorn has had himself attempted assassinated and then gone into hiding afterwards. He does it in Xenos.
I have to admit, even coming to the book new the first time when she was like, oh no, the house is burned down. I was like, Beta, it's okay. He's going to be fine. I just knew. And like, you don't pop in like a legendary iconic character and then he dies.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. He can do that whenever he wants. I love it. I love it. Do it more, die again and come back.
He's done this 3 times in the novels. How many times has he done that outside the novels? There's 100 years between the novels.
Who knows? Well, I love the fact that he and his gang were waiting in Queen Mab for 20 years, just hanging out in the shadows, apparently.
Yeah.
He's got time.
Got time. Should we get on to the big thing in this, which is obviously the big talking point that everyone's going to be talking about, which is going to be interesting to see how you approach it. So we go to somewhere, some alternate dimension world. I want to say we go to Cittagazze from His Dark Materials. But so we go there, we go to classical Italy, and that's not the warp, or maybe it is the warp, no one's completely sure. You get to it through pictures, common folkloric thing, mirrors or a portal and things. There are some really big reveals in it.
Yeah.
One of them being the whole thing of this finding the king in yellow, and then the king in yellow, spoilers everybody, I already warned at the start, but turning out to be Constantin Valdor.
No idea, mate.
Yeah, I know, right?
I thought the Yellow King was the Emperor.
I was deliberately blindsided because the King in Yellow is... So the King in Yellow is like, I think it's a Victorian Gothic that references a play, like a horror story play called The King in Yellow, that then I think Raymond Chandler references it. I think Lovecraft references it.
Okay. Wow.
So it's this thing, which made me obviously think it's bad. So I was going through the whole thing going, King in Yellow. The King in Yellow is obviously a reference in this world, this Victorian Gothic world. And it's a reference to mystery stories, and it's a reference to otherworldly beings. It's a lovely reference to put in. And so it's going to be some hideous otherworldly cosmic horror, right? So I wasn't thinking it was the Emperor, because I thought that would be too obvious.
I was hoping
obviously it's Valdor, which is like the very next thing.
So I was hoping the Emperor would turn up in the book and say something, because that would be crazy. But who is this chap?
So what's interesting is Valdor's not going to be very well known if you haven't read Heresy, which means there's a lot of people in 40K who won't know who Valdor is. Do you remember in the 20-minute time on the 40K I did for you that I talked about how the Astartes, the Space Marines, weren't the first genetically modified beings the Emperor created? He created a few before that to conquer Earth. The first ones he created were the Adeptus Custodes, the custodians, which are his bodyguard. And they're like Space Marines plus. Instead of being taken as teenagers and having things stuck into them, they're like taken as toddlers and sort of genetically reworked from the ground up, functionally immortal, wise counselors and tacticians and ridiculously strong warriors who, you know, are dedicated to being the bodyguard of the Emperor, not the Imperium, the Emperor himself, and acting in the interest of the Emperor himself. They were kind of like an elite amongst an elite and amongst an elite, even at the time of the heresy. And the first of them and their greatest and their leader was a guy called Constantin Valdor, who was like the primary bodyguard of the Emperor, which also meant he was sort of a statesman as well. Basically, for the purposes of this, he's a colossal figure from the ancient history of the Imperium that it's questionable how many people in 40k would even remember who he was, other than an allegorical figure, a mythical being. But there is currently no story written as to what happened after the heresy. He's definitely not around in 40k, but we haven't reached the end of the heresy novel, so we don't know what was going to happen to him. So one of the things this confirms, as well as the fact that Valdor's still alive in 40k somewhere, is that Valdor didn't die at the end of the heresy.
But like,
so he's like a secondary character, but a very present secondary character in the Horus Heresy stories.
Well, we talked in the last one about how books about gods are quite difficult, right? So we've now introduced a godlike character into our universe. And brought them into Queen Mab. So that is going to be so interesting to play out.
Yeah, and of all the godlike characters, Valdor is painted as one of the big things about the Custodes is I suppose, actually, I don't know if this is true, they are in some ways very human compared to Astartes. Astartes are in other ways very human. Custodes are very, very calm. There's a bit of thoughtfulness to the Custodes that sometimes the Space Marines don't really have.
No, Space Marines are more shouty, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Shouty and killy.
Although the Space Marine in this seems quite calm, but he also seems quite a bit out of it, to be honest.
Yes. I mean, it's an odd mix, isn't it? They have thrown in every single thing that you could want to see in this universe.
Yeah.
So when everyone was in, we did our book club with Dan, everyone was like, wow, you blew my mind. Like, it's absolutely crazy. Is that because everyone was like, oh, it's confirmed that this person survives? Or why do you think everyone was so excited and like?
I think generally putting a character that big from the heresy in your story is quite an unexpected move. We all know that this is going to change some massive part of the background, or at least it's going to fill in, I should say, some massive part of the background. We don't know what yet. Usually 40k novels happen in their own little, 40k is such a big thing that usually when people write 40k novels, they happen in their own isolated worlds. So you don't write a 40k novel where Eisenhorn's running around and then he goes and meets Khorne, the god. Then he meets the Emperor. Then he has a chat with Guilliman. Then he meets the leader of the Eldar. Then he, shakes hands with the leader of the Necrons. Then he goes home. That would be ridiculous. They're in the big galaxy. You rarely have any other characters they meet. Like, it would be rare for Eisenhorn to meet another named Inquisitor we know.
So you don't cross the streams, and this is a one.
Really.
Yeah.
So
what are the implications for this from a playable Games Workshop stance?
Oh, probably nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll probably find out about this weird thing that happened to Valdor afterwards, and it'll have significant philosophical impact on the 40k world. I don't know if there's any dates in these books when they happen. Eisenhorn happens about 600 or 700 years, I think, before current 40k. I don't know whether there'll be any significant, whether we'll learn something that has any impact on the current timeline.
That's a really interesting point, because in the book, when Beta meets the Blood Angel, the book says, the angel says, what year is this? What date is this? And where am I? And she says, I told him. She doesn't say the year is. And I was like, oh, but that would have given us some way to pin it to a timeline.
Yeah, it would be weird in 40k for a character to survive that long. Like, I think be surprised if they said Eisenhorn was still alive in the current timeline.
Interesting. You never know.
Never know. I guess we'll find out in the next book. I didn't know if this would be one that read easier because you're building on the first book, or was more confusing because it just makes a lot of references to other things.
I mean, I think Beta and wanting her to succeed and enjoying her story keeps you following it. And it is a page turner. And there's so many ambushes and things. It does keep you entertained and it's interesting. But certainly it took like 100% brain power. Like I couldn't even have music on while I was reading it. So
obviously it's going to be a while till the next one's out. So what we should do is, as has been suggested in the comments, which I think is a really good idea, we'll say what we're going to do next. And then like 3 or 4 weeks later, we'll do it.
What do you fancy? Should we start Horus Heresy and what would fit in with your video programming? Or should we stick with this lot?
I think we should do the second Eisenhorn book.
Cool.
Let's work through them. Also, they're quite short books.
Okay, great. I'm up for it.
Okay.
So we're going to start reading that. And then next month, we will do another video.
It's called, I always get the order wrong. I think the second one is Malleus.
We're going to read Malleus next, and then everyone else can read it too. And then next month, when we're talking about it, they'll all have read the book the same time as us. Okay.
And we can put questions. Maybe we'll try and figure out a way of doing questions. There you are. I knew I needed something to make use of these YouTube community posts with.
Yeah, well, either YouTube community posts or get people to ask you questions on your Twitter.
In a month from now, we'll do a book club on Malleus. And if people have particular questions to ask, then you're at Mira Manga.
Yes.
And I'm at Arbeiterian. And we'll take them and we'll see what happens.
Yay, that would be awesome.
Brilliant. All right, great. Thanks, Mira.
Thanks, Ian. Bye.
See you later. Bye.